Greetings. My name is Yola Dance, and I am the superintendent here at Fort Monroe National Monument, located at Point Comfort in present-day Hampton, Virginia. We are so pleased that you have joined us in talking about the significances of Fort Monroe, the history and culture that we are here to share, as well as the natural resources that we preserve and protect. We hope that you will continue to join us and share with us what's important and meaningful to you as we tell all American stories where history happened.
Hello, my name is Martha Droge, and I'm the Acting Portfolio Manager for the Park Planning and Special Studies Division in the Northeastern region of the United States for the National Park Service. I'm very glad to be here at Fort Monroe National Monument in Hampton, Virginia. This is a new park unit for the National Park Service, even though the proclamation establishing the monument occurred about a decade ago. For the Park Service, it takes about a decade to stand up a new park, and we're very excited to be engaged in planning work to do just that right now. Now, I know that many members of the public will remember past planning processes, all of which have been incredibly valuable to helping the National Park Service fulfill the purpose of this park, according to the proclamation that created the monument.
Part of the inclusion of North Beach in the proclamation establishing Fort Monroe National Monument was the fact that it was the least developed section of Fort Monroe and an ideal area to interpret Native American inhabitants, the arrival of English settlers, as well as African landing. So though we've mostly been talking about a natural environment and how humans part of what we want to also remind you of is that we want to think about how humans have interacted in this environment for over 400 years. And so not only should you think about the recreation opportunities and the natural resources, but also think in terms of the opportunity to continue interpretation, education, and the like on this northernmost end of Fort Monroe as well.
Well, I'm wondering what was here before. So I would like to replant some indigenous plants that were here 400 years ago. Mm-hmm. One planted, and I'd want a definition of how the natives
it's an opportunity to learn
enjoy it.
Yeah. As well.
Yeah.
This is rare public open space along the Chesapeake Bay in a built-up metropolitan area. It's extremely valuable, extremely unique.
There are people who want to be able to come out here after the sun goes down and look at the stars, and also they'll come out to watch the rockets launch from Wallops Island.
How about taking up the pavement, which detracts from its natural appearance? Might have to keep a dirt road or something for public safety, but I don't think we want cars driving up here. You ought to have to walk up here. Handicapped people use something else.
Like, we don't want this to, I'm not hearing anyone say you want this to be like a 20-foot wide, about the size of this road here, paved path for vehicles and rollerblading and cars and all kinds, like a high intensity use. That's not what am I misunderstanding?
There's all kinds of things you can do besides pave to accommodate runners. You can have cinders or some other thing, or they can run on dirt if it's maintained periodically.
Right.
So I don't think that drives the discussion.
Well, I think you're right on point. You don't want to pave smooth enough that you can rollerblade or skateboard.
Because this is going to be a long-term project in terms of getting this sorted out and fixed and everything. Is there any consideration being given to stabilizing the beach between where we are and the Paradise Ocean Club in terms of the amount of erosion that is taking place there and has taken place over the last just really few years?
Just with the area that's on the Park Service within our jurisdiction, we're absolutely looking at sort of a climate change resiliency monitoring effort this year. And so we have a team that's going to come down just to kind of give us a snapshot of what we need to be thinking about and considering that could inform future shoreline stabilization efforts. And it's a conversation that we've been interested in continuing with the city of Hampton, and so that was part of the reason that we've expanded our network to include folks in thinking about that.
If you go all the way back to just before 2005-ish, the Army had put in place plans which had been executed to stabilize the shoreline with the breakwaters and riprap and all those things that you see almost all the way up to Paradise Ocean Club. And that plan had actually been worked all the way up to, I want to say almost all the way up to the most northern part of Dog Beach for restoration and putting other things in place. But that funding got cut and couldn't be executed. So the plan was there, but the funding, because of the BRAC announcement, was terminated. So all these years later, and what we've been continuing to monitor through our side with the city and working with the Fort Monroe Authority and National Park Service, is that at some appropriate time we should revisit, our congressional delegation to look at getting that funding restored, because the plans were there. It just there was no funding to finish the planning. In fact, I think, and this is dating myself, but I can remember, I think it was 2006 time frame, 2005, 2006, and maybe there's some Army folks that recall that they finished that one section that they did complete, because I can remember them bringing in the big rocks and whatnot, and then, of course, they stopped that project. So we're going to continue to advocate and work through the CODEL to try and get that restored as a project that we think is of importance. We know, and you all know, and the Army knows, that this area up here is one of the areas that really breaches from tidal flooding and recurring issues with the sea rise and the like. So that area from here over to where the campground is really an area that we need to preserve and protect and stabilize on the bay side. So back in 2011-12 about the potential access from the city. So the city, understanding that this was going to be a national monument, took on a study that looked at potential access from Buckrow Beach into the fort here, all the way down into the other side of the fort towards the fortress. It looked at, I'm just going to say A to Z options, and understanding what Yola said about wanting to keep this area, really nice for people to come out and walk their dog, look at nature and stuff. So there was the concern at the time was emergency access response for incidents on this side of the property, because really we've only got, for our first responders, one or two entrances on the other side. And so if there was an emergency, how do we get folks, lifeguards or first responders, EMS out here? So we looked at that, and anyway, that study's available. It's there. I've shared it with Yola, just for people to know, because the city is interested in hopefully, making this a place where folks can walk, maybe bike, to get onto this side of the property from Buckrow Beach. So.
Birders just on the other side of the creek in Phoebus that go to the Phoebus Waterfront Park for bird watching that might be really interested in expanding that.
Night watch or night sky, being able to see the stars in a less polluted area, light polluted area, is also a request that we get quite frequently. It's a monthly call from a few people that wanted to know why they can't come beyond the barriers up here, because they know the lights aren't on and they want to watch the sky in a safe space. There are a lot of maybe other spaces, but they feel safe here. So
a lot of the peninsula has buildings, it's pretty bustling, and I like the solitude. So just listening to the water here is really relaxing. So I think birding, maybe a few benches where people could just sit and quietly reflect. I do think the historic and natural importance is significant, so maybe signage, which is not too intrusive but is helpful for people to understand the history, to understand the nature. I would be interested in having some kind of signage to talk about climate change and those kinds of impacts, because I think everybody who lives around here knows that it is an impact. But I do think there are plenty of built amenities on the peninsula, and having a place where there is not is valuable to many people who come to national parks.
It would be great to have the opportunity to have some programming potentially around those topics, not just have it be something you can do, but have, led programs around bird watching and night sky,
So guided
tours
activities.
or whatever. Yeah.
These interpretive buoys where you have a buoy and then you can dial up on your phone and you can hear about the history and you can hear about nature. I don't know if that's something that would work out here or not. It's kind of passive, so it's not bright, but you're out in the middle of wilderness and you just plug in your phone and there's a buoy and it tells you here's where you are and here's what happened historically and here's what the water temperature is today, and so it's a kind of a passive but informative interpretation. And I think having the Native American stories, I feel like finally this area has done a really great job to tell the story of the first landing. I still hate that little metal sign. There has to be more than a metal sign to talk about what happened here. And I'm glad that there's plans to do that. But I think the Native American story has not been told as well.
There's plenty of more commercial beaches all throughout Hampton Roads. So having one that's not as commercialized, like I said, park setting, I think would be good to keep that access. Meaning not developed with facilities, restaurants, all those kind of things. A natural kind of beach to recreate.
Well, to Pam's point, I mean, if you think about the history all the way back to Native Americans, for example, that being told here, but preserving this, because remember I said 76 I started coming here. It hasn't changed really since 76 that I can recall. There's been some things that have been removed, which I think is a good thing. But for soldiers, sailors, airmen, folks that serve the country, first responders, a place to come in solitude for your mental health, and this is where they came, and this is where you can come. And this is a place that just is quiet, peaceful, to Rick's point and others, that there's no, you don't walk like at Virginia Beach, you don't walk 10 feet and then you're in a a restaurant or some kind of gift shop. You're out here in nature, and we are very limited in the city of Hampton for any places like this, let alone Hampton Roads, where you're just in peaceful solitude. And so to keep that, preserve it for many generations, for a place to just come and reflect, to go to the beach. I mean, we used to come up here and throw our blanket out and go in the water and let our dog run around and just get away because it was quiet.
So now we're here, very short distance away, and as you can hear, there's the water on the other side of those dunes, which is great. Imagine that some of these plants, though, depending upon the work that you all need to do, these plants may not all be here.
That's correct. They likely will not be. A lot of them are not native, they're invasive, and the goal will be to restore it to a native vegetation.
That we had the opportunity to connect with the city of Hampton and think about climate change, adaptation, and coastal resiliency. We want to think about Fort Monroe as a barrier island and the role that it plays in helping to protect Hampton, and thinking about it, as it sits on the Chesapeake and here at Mill Creek. And so much of the work that we're doing with our climate change team will look at sea level rise, and North Beach would be important in thinking about that. And I think we kind of started getting into that conversation as Bruce shared some of the background. And I think some of the things we can think about are living shorelines, and gaining a better understanding based on what we have learned from the Army, and what our environmental team with the National Park Service will share with us. We can think about the Chesapeake Bay side, and in particular protecting the Chesapeake Bay.
What I'm hearing from this is an opportunity for non-motorized boating opportunities on the mills, the creek side.
Yeah, and that supports things that already happen. The Park Service already has a Kids in Kayaks program here.
Okay.
They just launch further down in the more developed sections. So bringing them up here into the natural sections, if it stays natural.
Kayaking is great. I think people should have access, but I don't know if we need to bring it all the way up here. We have a campground here where you could establish an access point already with the concessionaire running that.
So you're saying that already exists down there?
Well, I don't think they have a kayak location there. The existing kayak location is further south, down by the main gate. But
Okay.
I just worry that if we're going to create an automobile area here, that'll detract from the experience.
So maybe it sounds like certainly boat put in and takeout hand watercraft, can have taken and put in spots here. But what you're suggesting is maybe the facilities aspect of that, to manage that, could be a little further south, but not far.
I think so.
Okay.
As the facilities people that have to deal with the porta pots on the main part of the property, yeah, that's going to be the complaint you're going to get if you allow beach access, fishing, kayaking, whatever else people come up here. If there's not infrastructure for restrooms, then that's going to be the complaint.
It's a concern.
You're either going to get the complaint about the restrooms or the complaints about the exposure, or both.
Right.
So, yeah, some sort of minimal facilities to handle that would be required, and that infrastructure is not here today.
More sort of replanted in a more natural state, clear out some of the invasives, you see more wetland, and it's just more of a quiet, not really facilities, not many visitor facilities, more primitive sort of feeling to it.
Well, I think it could be more natural, but it could still accommodate some of the extra amenities for the people.
Okay, and so people would bring those amenities with them, or should the Park Service theoretically provide, I don't know, like a barbecue or a picnic table or something, or not really? Let people bring their own picnic blanket and just do what they will.
Well, when you say that, they could bring their own, but the park could still put little spots for them to go wherever they want to go.
Right. So some light intensity facilities for visitor, gathering, sitting, dining.
Yes, although maintaining the natural look of things.
Low key, not like a big group.
Exactly.
With a shelter and a roof and a hole.
Exactly. All natural. If the tree's going to make a canopy for them, that'll be that.
What I see when I come down here is more about what I don't see. I don't see buildings. I don't see signage. I don't see historical markers. I don't see all of the things that we do well. Don't see a whole lot of programming, and I expect, programming will come. Some of those things will come. But I see this as an opportunity to really incorporate interpreting the indigenous history of this land in a way that does it justice, from my opinion, that I don't think happens anywhere else on this property.
This place is very historic, and I think people visit places like this to educate themselves in the history, educate their children or whatever. I can imagine a family, husband, wife, and a couple of kids walking down and just exploring. We live in the neighborhood up there. This is what happened.
So it makes sense that beyond the gate, essentially, south of there is where the parking and the bathrooms and the whatnot will be. And people who really want to, it's not really that far, to be honest. Say what people want to hike it in, they know the facilities are right over there, but not here. Does that sound about right?
Right, just a quiet place to walk, and not so much worry about, the runners of the world, but just a place to walk where it's flat, where people of all mobility,
good point.
could maneuver and walk around out here without being challenged by joggers and runners and scooters and skateboarders and the like.
Just a throughway, so people can go back and forth, an active roadway where people can drive on, those kind of things. But where people can walk, I think part of the being around in an area that is so undisturbed, and in its more natural state, would be beneficial or attractive for joggers or bike riders or those kinds of things, non-motorized type recreation activities where you can still enjoy the quiet and the nature and the natural state of it without worrying about a lot of vehicles and those kind of things.
I think it would be very nice to allow bicyclists access, particularly if it was possible to connect, because a lot of people do ride their bikes up there and down there already, and so it could be a really nice connection. And I think there are plans to terminate the Birthplace of America Trail if it ever gets built at Fort Monroe, and so it could be a really nice connection to that as well.
I think your main path here can be closed to vehicular traffic and motorized traffic, and still be an access point for people to run, to walk up to get to the beaches that people want to get to the beaches. I think your wildlife view is a separate nature trail that's closer to the wetlands. That can be more immersive in the wetlands as opposed to seeing it from afar. So I think you're looking at. I would suggest you're looking at something on that side. This being a central access point, and then you've got your beaches on this side.
What over there? Look on that side.
That side would be your wildlife trails, or whatever.
Or historical
Interpretation. I mean, you could do interpretation here as well in the center, but I think that's more your habitat, your wildlife, and you get to experience what the land may have felt like before. Because the land didn't have this berm before, right? So you can't say walking up onto the beach is what it felt like for Native Americans. It wasn't here. But no one's suggesting taking that away, because that gives us resiliency and helps protect the rest of the
Having this part undeveloped is a beauty. It's important, and I think the rest of the peninsula has amenities that people can get to, and having an area where people can go who want solitude is important.
Keep it in the character of what we've been talking about in terms of less intense use, to where anybody that does want to come in here is coming in here because they're walking, enjoying nature, those kind of things, and not having to dodge traffic, or it's not going to be as crowded as Virginia Beach.
And it seems like the further we move away from the entrance up to here, the more I heard, we talked about solitude, serenity, the idea that if people really want a high intensity beach experience or a shorter walk from their car with all their stuff to go to the beach, they do that to the south, and this would be a place of lower intensity uses, more of a solitude, and if not solitude, certainly a lower, fewer people, and a greater opportunity to sort of be alone with nature and whatever your experience here is. It'd be more of a pack it in, pack it out sort of experience, or maybe limited trash pulling or something. Does that sound about right? How do you all feel about that? I'm not trying to tell you what to think, but I'm saying, am I hearing you? Huh?
Leave no trace is the big lingo nowadays, places like this.
Right. How people might like to use it.
It could work, but you would have to encourage some local groups, maybe like Boy Scouts or something like that, to come up here and help with picking up trash whenever possible. Something to at least help keep the place clean on voluntary work, so that way if you got those bad apples who want to litter all over the place, you still have someone who can at least help the rangers pick up everything.
Shared stewardship and partnerships. And the Park Service relies so heavily on incredibly hardworking partners and volunteers. Have I missed anything? Is there any kind of specific use?
How about a kiosk of something?
Information kiosk?
Yeah, interpreting some things like birds or trees or wetlands or something like that.
I'm talking for the entire zone, right? And so maybe more than one at different sites, different like wayside signs or something, or one big information kiosk.
Maybe a couple. I don't think you'd want too many.
Smaller groups, families, little groups. When you get into those recreational things, you start doing volleyball courts. Well, now you've got 4-on-4 and you've got bigger groups, and things like that. And not that becomes loud or obnoxious or anything like that, but you're changing the use of, I think, what it sounds like everybody's talking about is they'd rather, mom, dad, and the two kids come walking up and explore the area, or, a bird watcher or two can come in smaller groups and smaller usage type things.
This would be more pleasing to the local community if it was a resource-based facility, focused on the natural resources that are unique, and the history and the layers and the cultural resources and so on that are here. More so than a facilities-based where we have a laundry list of activities that already happen nearby anyway. People aren't looking to add to those because you have them, and this has a different and unique and distinct quality. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I'm trying to think it through. Am I hearing am I hearing it correctly?
What's lacking at Fort Monroe is really a truly natural experience where the concrete ends.
I can see that it would be a very educational property if it was put together properly for people to bring their children and even older people to come down and just see things and read the kiosk and the signs and identifying native plants and birds and especially during nesting season. I can imagine this is a wonderful place to come during the bird nesting season with all the shorebirds that frequent this property.
I know it can seem that some of the conversations that we have with planning can sometimes sound like past planning dialogues that have gone on for at least a decade when it comes to Fort Monroe National Monument. Just know the National Park Service very much appreciates your continued participation and support and helping us, the National Park Service, to better understand these resources and to help protect them and provide them to the public in a safe and inviting way that fulfills the mission and helps the National Park Service provide these resources and maintain them in an appropriate fashion for future generations. How can the general public help the National Park Service with this process? Well, we invite everyone to participate in this meeting and also to go to the project website, which is being discussed during the public outreach phase and in our project newsletter and so on. And share your thoughts. We have an online portal where you can provide your own personal comments about the kind of uses you would like to see at the site or things you definitely don't want to see happening there in the North Beach area. And we'll be happy to hear any of your thoughts or concerns on the matter. And we so appreciate your help. And please always let us know if you have questions about this or other planning processes as we continue to help this new park unit really develop through all of its planning requirements. Thank you.